The Case for the Ontology of Money as Credit, Money as Bearer or Basis of Value, by Phil Armstrong and Kalim Siddiqui. Mainstream Orthodoxy, a Critique. For Ingham, quote, Menger's 1892 seminal analysis based upon rational individual choice still underpins the current neoclassical story of the origin of money, end quote. As exemplified in Dowd 2000 and Klein and Selgin 2000. Footnote 4. Ray notes that according to the orthodox neoclassical view, money reduces transaction costs, simplifying economic life by lubricating the market mechanism. Friedman, 1968. Indeed, this is the unifying theme in virtually all orthodox approaches to banking, finance, and money. Banks, financial instruments, and even money itself originate to improve market efficiency. Klein and Selgin, 2000, end quote. Ray, 2006. End footnote. Menger's ontology is deeply rooted in the presupposition, quote, that the individual enters the world equipped with rights to the free disposal of his property and the pursuit of his economic self-interest, and that these rights are anterior to and independent of any service that he may render, end quote. Tawney, 1920. Menger's theorizing is based on an approach that characterizes the approach of the Austrian school, quote, anti-empiricist deductivism, end quote, founded upon the axiom that individual agents seek to achieve the subjective goal of maximizing utility. Hans, 2001. Given the a priori truth of his presuppositions and his impeccably logical deductive reasoning, the need for empirical testing disappears for Menger. The conjectural history is given a green light. Menger contends that the origin of money, quote, can be understood as following from a spontaneous process whereby individuals have discriminated between alternative commodities by degree of salability and eventually arrived at the most efficient option, end quote. Menger, 1892. For neoclassical economists, the conjectural history serves a very useful purpose. It supports their ethics. It is most helpful to specify a system where money develops as a natural response to changing circumstances by individuals maximizing expected utility. Neoclassical theorists contend that money is merely a veil. Its introduction into a barter economy improves efficiency, but leaves quantities produced and relative prices unchanged. Ingham considers that, quote, all orthodox economic accounts of money are commodity exchange theories. Both money's historical origins and logical conditions of existence are explained as the outcome of economic exchange in the market that evolves as a result of individual utility maximization. End quote. Ingham, 2004. We are not suggesting that money only plays the role of medium of exchange in orthodox theory. Rather, that it is this function which gives money its distinctive character. Its importance as a unit of account and store value, although acknowledged in established theory, is not stressed. A conjectural history approach fits well with this perspective. According to the neoclassical view, there is no role for the state in the genesis of money. The state is seen as a late arrival on the scene and a corrupting force, taking an unjustified share of national wealth by exercising control of a monetary system which had developed from the actions of individuals rightly pursuing optimizing behavior. Footnote 5. Authorities, quote, controlled minting, established coins count, enforced its use to pay debts, and policed its exclusivity as a medium. They also charged for it at the mint. Individuals pay in extra amounts of bullion and came away with coin, end quote. Desan, 2014. Critics perceive the authorities' actions in centralizing control and forcing private individuals to accept a lower amount of bullion in the form of coin than they provided in metal as reprehensible. End footnote. In contrast, heterodox economists stress the role of money as providing a unit of account, an approach which tends to be compatible with a focus on the importance of the role of a central authority in the genesis of money, as opposed to market forces. Ingham takes issue with the orthodox view on both logical and historical grounds, and finds significant support for his critique in the evidence, Ingham 2004. He contends that discrete truck and barter would lead to the production of a vast array of bilateral exchange ratios, rather than the enduring unit of account required for the measurement of relative prices, critical to the operation of the market, Ingham 2004b. Rather than arising from a spontaneous process, for Ingham, a stable unit of account is required before a market can function. If this is the case, we need to consider how and why this stable unit of account would emerge. Ingham notes that, quote, in Menger's conjectural history, money evolves from the rational use of the most tradable commodity as a medium of exchange that maximizes trading options. However, he realized that base metal coins and inconvertible paper money broke this link. Why, Menger, 1892, asked, should individuals be ready to exchange goods for worthless little metal discs or paper symbols? End quote. Ingham, 2004. Ingham considers the attempts at producing a resolution by later neoclassical economists and stresses that the arguments expressed by Jones, 1976, Dowd, 2000, and Klein and Selgin, 2000, which contend that non-commodity, intrinsically valueless money can be used as a means to reduce transactions costs, fail to deliver a convincing answer, and cannot explain the existence of money. He notes that Hahn had already observed that, quote, it is only advantageous for any given agent to mediate his transactions by money provided that all other agents do likewise. End quote. Hahn, 1987. Ingham concludes his point with the coup de grace. Quote, to state the sociologically obvious, the advantages of money for the individual presuppose the existence of money as an institution in which its moneyness is established. Ingham, 2004. In a typical case of a conjectural history, or money developing from barter story, one commodity such as grain exchanges directly for many other commodities. For example, grain may be exchanged for salt, meat, and other products. The quantitative worth of grain is expressed in specific quantities of different commodities. Under such a system, the grain has many different exchange ratios with different commodities, which are accepted by the societies involved in exchanges. The grain becomes a representative commodity, generally used in exchange for a wide range of others. Messori, 1997. Following the conjectural history narrative, grain might be expected to be eventually replaced by something which might to be more saleable, making a more efficient form of money. By virtue of its relative scarcity, portability, durability, uniformity, and divisibility, precious metal of a given purity seems to fit the bill. The use of quantities of grain as money, or at least as a unit of account, is well documented. Ray, 1998. However, from a post-Keynesian perspective, drawing directly from Keynes's work, this use is founded on state action rather than being a market outcome. The units of account used in early empires were almost without exception based on grain quantities and led to the establishment of precious metal standards. Keynes, 1982. Footnote 6. Particularly Babylonia, the Mediterranean Basin, and Europe. Ray, 1998. End footnote. If we refer to a, quote, a mina, shekel, or pound, all the early money units unit based on either wheat or barley grains, with the nominal value of gold usually measured in wheat units, and the nominal value of silver measured in barley units. End quote. Ray, 1998. Ray notes that a king would be able to establish a monetary unit by setting it equal to a particular quantity of grains of gold, but the relative value of gold represented by its market price could change without the need to change the standard. Ray, 1998. Thus, the value of, for example, a shekel weight of gold could rise or, less frequently, fall against the abstract standard of the shekel. Footnote 7. The gold standard represents an unusual period in history, where the monetary authorities exerted control over the market price of gold by agreeing to buy and sell unlimited quantities in order to maintain the official price. Armstrong, 2015. End footnote. Such a situation can easily be illustrated in a modern context. The U.S. dollar is officially defined as 0.0231 ounces of gold, Tobin, 1998. But despite the fact that the market value of gold in U.S. dollars is far higher today, the definition of the dollar remains the same. The U.S. dollar has become an abstract standard, divorced from its original definition. Clearly, the relative value of commodities could change against the standard. The state exerts influence on relative prices by the value it ascribes to the commodities it accepts in settlement of debt from the private sector via taxes or tribute. It may publish price lists in a unit of account. However, the value of commodities determined in private markets, although influenced by official prices, would in no way be fixed. Footnote 8. For example, a modern state might fix an official exchange rate which determines the price it will buy and sell foreign currency. However, this will not necessarily mean that private trades will occur at these prices. End footnote. Libertarians who contend that market forces determine both the choice of the representative commodity and the structure of relative prices denominated using that commodity claim that the observation of historic variable prices disproves the contention that the state decides on the standard and is able to provide official price lists. Footnote 9. Nareshta, 2013, contends that the observed variable prices, quote, based on supply and demand, end quote, contradict Polanyi's fixed price theory of trade. See Polanyi, 1957. See also Oppenheim, 1957. Nareshta notes that, for example, quote, the price of tin rose 20% in a short period, end quote, and that, quote, texts in Babylonia from merchants to their agents order them to sell according to the market, odd texts in a regime of supposed fixed prices, end quote. Nareshta also asserts that within grain markets, with prices changes based on supply and demand, prices in a good year fall and prices in a bad year rise, according to the size of the harvest. That behavior is difficult to explain if prices are not determined through the interaction of profit-maximizing buyers and sellers. End quote. Nareshta fails to distinguish between official prices set by the state at which it will both accept and disperse commodities, and private trades at market prices, and attempts to find evidence contradictory to Polanyi's analysis, where none exists, in a futile attempt to find support for ideological dogma, namely the priority of markets over the state. Nareshta, 2013. End footnote. From a post-Keynesian and indeed an anthropological perspective, such criticism is misplaced. Importantly, as noted above, the libertarian critique provides no compelling explanation of the origin of the unit of account itself. Orthodox neoclassical economists consider the use of cowrie shells as an example of primitive commodity money, replacing barter before, eventually, being superseded by precious metal currency. For hundreds of years, cowrie shells were used as a means of payment in India, China, the Middle East, and West Africa. Quiggin, 1949, argues that, quote, cowries had been in circulation as a means of payment by traders from India, China, eastward to the Pacific Islands, across and encircling Africa to the west coast, and penetrating into the New World, both before and, in some areas, even after precious metal currency had become generally accepted. End quote. Scheich, 2016. Cowrie shells satisfy most of the characteristics of money, in the form of currency, being portable, countable, recognizable, and difficult to counterfeit. In Nigeria, cowries were used widely even until the first half of the 20th century, especially for small transactions. The story of cowrie currency is rich, and there is far more to it than a conjectural view of it replacing barter, or an earlier form of commodity money, by virtue of possessing features allowing it to function efficiently as money. Cowrie was used as money in Dahomey, despite the fact it was not produced domestically. It needed to be imported and was then issued by the monarch. Without this state-directed process, it could not have been used as a currency. Polanyi, 1968. Rather than being an aspect of a market-based evolutionary process, it was an aspect of state activity. Quote, cowrie gained the status of a currency by virtue of state policy, which regulated its use and guarded against its proliferation by preventing shiploads from being freely imported. End quote. Polanyi, 1968. In addition to neoclassical economists overlooking the role of the state in determining the monetary standard, their tendency to conflate the unit of account with the means of payment is another important source of error. As pointed out by Innes above, this is a typical feature of conjectural histories of money. There is a distinct difference between the unit of account and money things used to make payments denominated in that unit. Such a distinction is an ancient one, as noted by Grierson, who considers Homeric Greece and points out that although the ox was the standard or unit of account, the means of settlement was usually in other forms, such as gold or commodities whose value was measured in oxen. Grierson, 1977. With respect to coins, Ray contends that the relationship of the nominal value of a coin to the unit of account in which it was denominated was not based upon precious metal content and could often vary in relation to the unit of account. Footnote 10. Ray, 1998, notes how kings might cry down the value of the currency by reducing the value of a coin relative to the unit of account. Quote, the king would not change the monetary unit, but would only change the monetary value of his tokens, thereby avoiding disruption in private markets, which for the most part were carried out using tallies, bills of exchange, or other debts denominated in the money of account. End footnote. It was determined by authority. He writes, coins, quote, coins, even though they may contain precious metal, do not necessarily carry a nominal value that is fixed relative to either the nominal value of the embodied gold or even to the money of account. End quote. Ray, 1998. Polanyi notes that the once, the French equivalent of the ounce, the standard in English ounce trade, provides the unit of account for the French slave trade, Traded items, including cowrie, were thus given a relative value. Polanyi, 1966. Keynes notes the distinction between a commodity which is disconnected from a unit of account and merely used in a way to improve spot transactions, and a money thing which, by virtue of its relationship to a standard of money, to a standard or money of account, becomes money proper. Quote, something which is merely used as a convenient medium of exchange, on the spot, may approach to being money, inasmuch as it may represent a means of holding general purchasing power. But if this is all that is involved, we have scarcely emerged from the stage of barter. Money proper, in the full sense of the term, can only exist in relation to a money of account. End quote. Keynes. This point is stressed by Grierson. Quote, for my part, I would insist on the test of money being a measure of value, unless the commodities used for exchange bear some fixed relation to a standard. We are still dealing with barter, or where unilateral payments of a redistributive character are concerned with payments in kind. The distinction seems to me to be a fundamental one. End quote. Grierson, 1977. We would also point out that, despite the widespread existence of barter, anthropological analysis, Humphrey and Hugh Jones, is instrumental in supporting Graeber's 2011 contention that barter could not have had a role to play in the development of money. The reason for this conclusion is that, despite extensive study, no society based on the use of barter has yet been found. Quote, no example of a barter economy, pure and simple, has ever been described, let alone the emergence of money. All available ethnography suggests that there never has been such a thing. Humphrey, 1992, quoted in Graeber, 2011. Although we may never know the full story of the development of money, we can surely at least develop theories which provide a compelling explanation of the nature of money and underpin an understanding of the history of its development. For this reason, we believe credit and state theories are complementary and superior to the orthodox theory. In contrast to the neoclassical theory, which finds its roots in the optimizing behavior of individuals, the state theory, which we shall discuss below, contends that the origins of money are rooted in social relationships and the development of power and inequality. Traditional tribal societies were essentially egalitarian and had no need for money. According to Polanyi, they were based upon reciprocity, redistribution, and householding. Polanyi, 1944. However, with the development of inequality, a raison d'etre for money emerged. Henry finds the essential origins of money to lie in power and inequality rather than exchange. Quote, those who see money as a social relationship stress the significance of money as a unit of account, in which obligations are both created and extinguished. Money then represents a relation between those who claim these obligations and those who must service those claims. End quote. Henry, 2004. He goes on to suggest that the role of exchange in the genesis of money is of minor significance, especially since the existence of markets is in no way a necessary condition for the evolution of money.